magnets always lose their strength. The Earth's magnet has lost 10% of its strength in the last 150 years. Well, that's normal for magnets to lose their strength, but that's interesting. That proves the Earth is not more than 25,000 years old. This is a limiting factor. Because if you go backwards in time, the magnetic field was stronger, and at some point it becomes too strong for life to exist here because of the heat generated, among other things.
This is really fascinating. He says it proves it because if you go backwards, you'll see that it only adds up to 4,000 years. But when we do that for plate tectonics or any number of other things, he says, you weren't there, you didn't see them move every year for the past 50 million years. But apparently he was there for the past 150 years watching the magnetic field dissipate. We don't need to see the plates move. We know they move because they fit together. But I looked really hard for this, and literally the only information I could find about the Earth losing its magnetic field was from creationist websites. I could believe it's lost some amount of magnetic strength over the past 150 years, but I would be seriously surprised if it was even detectable by our instruments.
It also proves carbon dating can't work. Because carbon dating is directly proportional to the magnetic field. Because as the magnetic field declines, more radiation gets in, and that's what forms carbon-14. We cover more on that in video 7.
Oh God, I have to explain carbon dating. Okay, here's a short description. The sun hits carbon atoms, which are everywhere, with radiation. Sometimes that forms carbon-14, which is much more radioactive than carbon-12, which is a stable form of the element. Being radioactive, we know that half of the amount of carbon-14 will decay after 5,730 years. So when something dies, it stops taking in or putting out carbon. So we measure the amount of carbon-14 atoms left in its body or whatever it is we happen to be testing, and that will give us a reasonably accurate estimate of its age. It's not flawless, but it's useful for giving us a good estimate. But carbon dating isn't supposed to give an exact month, day, and year. It's supposed to give a time range. Ironically, the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were found in a cave near the Dead Sea around 1947, were carbon dated and got a date of anywhere from 200 BCE to 90 CE, depending on which piece of papyrus they were testing, which, by the way, is made of carbon, a living thing. It was made from a reed that grows in Egypt near the Nile River. It's an age range, an era. Creationists seem to trust carbon dating in this one case, but in no other circumstance.
But in 1949, when they first invented carbon dating, the leg of a mammoth dated 15,000 years old, but the skin from the same mammoth dated 21,000 years old. Didn't work. And it got worse as time went along. 1975, one part of a mammoth was 29,000 years old, another part's 44,000 from the same animal.
Okay, after really looking into this, it turns out that his reference there, Troy L. Pugh, Quaternary Stratigraphic Nomenclature in Unglaciated Central Alaska, specifically says that all parts dated were from different animals. One was even labeled as a baby. Additionally, the last date given was inaccurate, specifically because the hide was soaked in glycerin. They said the last date should be disregarded when they did the dating in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s.
The Earth is spinning about 1,000 miles an hour, 1,041.6 for you technical folks, at the equator, but the Earth is slowing down. It actually is slowing down enough to create a problem. Every year to year and a half, they have to add a second to the clock because the Earth is slowing down. They call it a leap second. 1990, Pensacola News Journal said, we have to add a tick to the clock because Earth's rotation is slowing down. It says regular clocks use days as a measure which are going longer by 1,000th of a second or more daily as Earth's rotation slows.
The Earth's rotation slows more at certain times and less at others. It's slowing down because of the moon's pull. As the moon spins around us, it's slowing our rotation. The rotational energy is redirected into the moon, escaping our gravitational pull, which happens at a rate of about 1.5 inches per year. The Earth's rotation has slowed about 1.7 milliseconds in the past 100 years. We have, however, gained some extra seconds to our standard clocks thanks to an organization called the International Earth Rotation and Reference System Service, or IERS. But this guy's making it out like the Earth couldn't possibly be older than 6,000 years because the rotation would just be going too fast. That's bullshit.
Well, now, the Earth is only 6,000 years old. This is no problem. It was going a little faster when Adam was here. He wouldn't notice. He didn't have a watch anyway, as far as we know. But some of these guys want me to believe the Earth is billions of years old. Man, if you go back billions of years, the world was spinning real fast.
I knew this was coming. That's why I deconstructed your entire argument. It isn't gaining a second at the rate you said. You just warped the data to make it fit your narrative. The fact that you actually put the research into this, and every other false fact that you spit out, tells me that you know they aren't true. I've always said that in a cult, there's some guy at the top that knows it's a scam, and in a religion, that guy is dead. Kent Hovind acts like a cult leader if I've ever seen one.
The centrifugal force would have been enormous. The winds would have been 5,000 miles an hour from the Coriolis effect. And you think dinosaurs lived 200 million years ago?
There he goes again, dropping big scientific terms on an illiterate audience. He does this constantly. It makes him sound like he knows what he's talking about. But since I've completely destroyed your premise, the Coriolis effect is rendered irrelevant.
The Sahara Desert has what's called a prevailing wind pattern. The wind almost always blows the same way. This creates a problem. The hot air blows off the desert and kills the trees next door, and that area becomes desert. The process is called desertification. Well, now, they've done quite a bit of study on Sahara. That's pretty obvious it is growing. There's just no question about that. But they said, after studying it for years, they said, you know, the Sahara Desert is probably about 4,000 years old. Okay, I have no reason to doubt that, but I do have a question. If the Sahara is only 4,000 years old, why don't we have a bigger desert someplace? Why would the biggest desert on Earth be less than 4,000 years old? Well, I have a theory about that. Now, here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God created everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. It's pretty hard to have a desert under a flood.
I looked at his resource he has listed, and all I found was the desertification effect. There was nothing about it being 4,000 years old. Best estimates say 2 to 3 million years, but some scientists think it's even older than that. Sand blows from the Sahara Desert and Middle Eastern countries all the way to South America, but somehow it's not a desert yet. At this rate, you'd think the entire world would be a desert, since sand gets everywhere. It's not a big desert because sand doesn't necessarily spread a desert. He's just twisting facts again.
Right? So the desert couldn't start growing until the floodwater went down. So I predict, based on the Bible, the biggest desert in the world will be less than 4,400 years old. It is. Wow. Maybe the Bible's right.
I just want to point out that the Sahara Desert is not the oldest desert. The Namib Desert in Namibia is the oldest desert in the world, which has existed for at least 55 million years. The biggest argument between Christians and scientists is that science can build models about reality and make predictions about those models. If you didn't catch what he's doing here, he's trying to make it out like he can use the Bible to make predictions. That would be fine if that was a valid prediction, but the Sahara Desert is scientifically proven to be much older than 4,000 years. None of his predictions stand up.